This audio web novel is narrated using my own voice. It is created for listeners who prefer enjoying the story in audio form and is not meant to replace the original web novel. If you enjoy the story, please support the original author. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to Extreme Highlights Audio Novels, Chapter 4211, The Ancient Dao in the Yellow Springs. The giant whale sank into the yellow springs and disappeared, and the surging yellow springs gradually became calm. No more creatures emerged to threaten Lin Moyu. These entities, similar to soul devourers, were able to adapt to Dao attacks and develop some immunity, but unlike true soul devourers, their immunity was not innate and required time to develop. However, they were unable to resist the world burning fire no matter how many came, it made no difference. This was much like the soul devourers, who also couldn't withstand the world burning fire. Lin Moyu had refined an unknown number of soul devourers this way. Only the soul devourer kings could resist a little, but even they weren't truly immune. Watching the now calm yellow springs, Lin Moyu stood in contemplation for a long time. Little Python asked curiously, "Master, what are you thinking about?" Lin Moyu replied in a low voice, "I'm wondering where these things come from. They're similar to soul devourers, but still different. They usually dwell below the yellow springs. So what lies beneath the yellow springs? And that giant whale from before, didn't you find it strange?" Little Python tilted its head. "Strange? I didn't notice anything odd." Lin Moyu said, "That fellow was half real, half illusory, neither a spirit beast nor a true creature. I felt like it didn't belong in this time and space." After entering the beast abyss, Lin Moyu noticed the first clue he faintly sensed that the beast abyss concealed secrets. The giant whale's statement was also peculiar. It said that even Eternals seeking the depths of the Yellow Springs would only find death, not just dormancy. But within the domain, it's nearly impossible for an Eternal to die, the beast abyss included. Unless the depths of the Yellow Springs belong to a different reality, it would be impossible for Eternals to perish there. With intense curiosity, Lin Moyu said, "Let's go down." Little Python gave an obedient "oh" and plunged toward the depths of the yellow springs without protest. After what had happened earlier, Little Python harbored no arrogance and was 100 times more loyal to Lin Moyu. He did whatever the master ordered. They dove into the yellow springs, the waters parting automatically. The yellow springs looked like water but weren't actually water. What flowed within was Dao power, an intermingling of countless Dao's essence mixed with impurity, undifferentiated. In this respect, it differed from the order within the domain. As soon as they entered the Yellow Springs, Lin Moyu realized that the threads of rule enveloping the entire domain could not reach this place. Even the rules of the domain had no effect on the Yellow Springs here, the rules could not touch. This meant that within the domain there existed a place utterly beyond the reach of the rules, an immense peculiarity. Lin Moyu smiled faintly at this realization. Without domain rules, he could not be expelled. He could freely use power-gathering techniques, stepping into transcendence without worry about being forcibly ejected. Here he could unleash the peak of his power. With both his own transcendence and his rebirth ability, he doubted anything could kill him now. "Master, it's getting narrower all around," Little Python spoke up suddenly. Lin Moyu noticed the rapidly constricting space as they went deeper side to side, then even fore and aft. He halted Little Python and dispatched undead minions to scout the surroundings. Soon a map of the Yellow Springs layout formed in his mind. "It really is a spring," Lin Moyu remarked. He'd previously thought Yellow Springs was a river, but now realized it really was a spring, the deeper, the narrower. Only near the surface did it spread wide like a river. But at the bottom, the area shrank drastically. With the topography mapped, Lin Moyu had Little Python continue their descent, heading toward the deepest source of the Yellow Springs. The undead minions had scouted ahead. There were no apparent dangers. The Dao power flowing in the Yellow Springs posed no threat to outsiders, but the words of the giant whale lingered. Lin Moyu remained extremely alert and took nothing for granted. They didn't know how far they had traveled, but finally, Little Python reached the very spring eye, the origin point of the Yellow Springs. Lin Moyu called a halt, pausing near the spring's mouth to carefully sense the flows of Dao. Earlier, he'd already noted that the Tao power within the Yellow Springs emanated an ancient aura. The farther down, the more ancient it became. Such ancientness suggested the Yellow Springs had existed for countless years, perhaps even predating the domain itself, an idea he couldn't verify, only a feeling. The presence of such ancient Tao, the legendary Yellow Springs, and threats possibly yet unseen, made Lin Moyu hesitate. Should he proceed further? The spring's mouth was right beside him. If he didn't go, what was the purpose of coming so far? Yet, to go might mean never returning. Whatever lay beneath the spring's mouth was an utter mystery. Maybe I shouldn't, was the thought that suddenly ballooned in his mind. Instantly, Lin Moyu became acutely alert, surging with power and startling little Python, who stared at him in confusion. Nothing had seemingly changed. Lin Moyu's eyes flashed. To influence my heart. He willed away all unnecessary thoughts, clearing his emotions. Unaware, his Tao heart had been subtly shaken by an invisible force. Only when his Tao heart wavered did he think of retreating. The ancient Tao power here possessed mysterious abilities he did not understand. Fortunately, his instincts saved him, restoring his heart's steadfastness. Since he had come all this way, there was no turning back. In fact, the way his Tao heart had been shaken felt eerily similar to the time he encountered the Soul Devourer Emperor outside the domain. Lin Moyu wondered if there was another Soul Devourer Emperor lurking beneath the spring's eye. This place was so mysterious that nothing would surprise him. Regaining his composure, Lin Moyu whispered, "Go in." Little Python, thinking simply and obeying Lin Moyu, dove straight into the spring's mouth without resistance. Violent Tao power surged as Little Python burst from the spring's eye into another realm. This new space was filled everywhere with ancient Tao energies, pressing in from all sides so that Little Python could not hover in the air and was forced downward by overwhelming pressure. Lin Moyu also felt the Tao force. It seemed flight was forbidden, but he ignored it. Gather power. With a thought, he broke through, transcending eternity and entering half-step transcendence. Space twisted about him. The incoming Tao power shattered, and with the pressure lifted, Little Python was able to steady itself in the air. Lin Moyu still sensed no domain rules, no force to expel him. Here he could maintain half-step transcendence indefinitely, with his soul power backed by the world tree, no fear of running out. "Amazing!" Little Python exclaimed. In this space above them floated 9 colossal spring eyes, drawing in Tao power from the air. Threads of Tao streamed into the springs, transforming into the water of the Yellow Springs. Before we head to the next chapter, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep the stories coming. Chapter 42 Why Do Eternals Die? There are 9 beast chasms in total, each containing a yellow spring, and each yellow spring corresponds to a spring eye. In this space, which isn't particularly large, 9 gigantic spring eyes continually absorb ancient great Tao power, connecting to their respective beast chasms, forming roaring yellow springs. From here, one can access the other beast chasms. Little Python quickly understood, his tone 3 parts surprised, so the 9 beast chasms are all connected. Lin Moyu also examined the spring eyes, but what he saw went far deeper than Little Python's perspective. He saw the essence beneath the surface. Every inch of this space overflowed with ancient great Tao power, the very source of the Yellow Springs. Moreover, this ancient great Tao force isolated the space from the rules of the 5 realms domain, meaning it was extremely powerful, even surpassing the domain rules. But where did these ancient great Taos come from, and why were they so powerful? The more Lin Moyu sensed, the more shocked he became. These great Taos were unimaginably ancient, steeped in an aura of time and desolation that shook his spirit. He could almost hear a sort of resounding cry within it. The ancient great Tao held within a tangled network of countless Taos. It felt as if all the Taos in the 5 realms domain were twisted together. After being twisted together, the Taos seemed to be heading back to their origin, tracing a path of returning to chaos, yet never quite succeeding. Seemingly chaotic, the whole still moved by a certain mysterious order. Lin Moyu couldn't help but marvel, so even the Tao can be like this. But where did the danger come from? Besides the power of the ancient Taos, there were no living beings here. They had entered without encountering any threats, so where was the risk? Suddenly, little Python gave a startled cry. Master, I feel my connection with the Tao weakening. Although all virtual beasts do not need to purposely cultivate, they still comprehend a certain Tao, drawing much of their strength from it, little Python included. Now he found his connection to the Tao fading, and thus his own strength as well. Lin Moyu checked Little Python's realm was unchanged, but his aura indeed was weakening. Threads of ancient great Tao power permeated his body, and the omnipresent force relentlessly drove away Little Python's original Tao connection, replacing it. When his original Tao was fully expelled, Little Python would lose all ties to it, keeping his realm but losing most of his power. Once that happened, in the eyes of the Taos, Little Python would cease to exist. It dawned on Lin Moyu what the great whale meant by danger and why Eternals die here. Eternals are not supposed to die because their Taos are anchored in the origin land. So long as the Tao persists, they can reincarnate through it, and after a dormant period, revive. But once their Tao is severed, they are at best Tao Lord peak cultivators and thus susceptible to death. Here, the ancient Taos can strip away a cultivator's original Tao, breaking the connection. This would be impossible in the outer world. The domain's rules wouldn't allow it. But here, where those rules don't reach, the impossible happens. Without a Tao anchor, an Eternal would truly die if killed here. No dormancy, just final death. Beneath the yellow springs, Lin Moyu discovered a new world, as if seeing the other face of the domain. Yet for some reason, he himself felt untouched. His bond with the undying Tao was unchanged, unaffected by the ancient Taos. Lin Moyu attributed it to the unique nature of the undying Tao only that could explain it. Little Python, anxious, was powerless to resist the ancient Tao's invasion. Lin Moyu, with a thought, sent the power of death towards him. Hold still. Little Python shivered, not daring to move as the power of death wrapped him. Death's force corrupted and consumed the invading ancient Tao. As the battle raged within Little Python's body, wounds appeared all over him, but he dared not utter a sound. The expressions of pain were almost comically exaggerated. Once the ancient Tao was purged, Lin Moyu opened his storage space, saying, "Get in, you'll come out when it's safe." Little Python zipped inside, genuinely terrified. Only those who had experienced the loss of Tao could understand how frightening it was. Disconnection from the Tao was just the first danger. Eternals might detect and resist it, and there were 9 spring eyes any could admit escaped from the yellow springs. There had to be more to threaten an Eternal here. 9 spring eyes. Lin Moyu's gaze sharpened moments ago. He'd glimpsed a 10th spring eye. When he looked again, it was gone. 9 spring eyes corresponded to the 9 beast chasms. Where did the 10th lead? He searched for the 10th spring eye, but no matter how much he tried, it did not reappear. Yet Lin Moyu trusted his senses. It was not an illusion. The 10th spring eye did exist. He didn't give up, running repeated, meticulous searches of every corner of the space, confirming also that the ancient Tao could not invade him, and his undying Tao remained unchanged. The only issue, he could not return directly to the origin land from here. Despite not finding the 10th spring, Lin Moyu made a new discovery. Each of the 9 spring eyes endlessly drew in Tao force, spun into ribbons that fed into the springs. The mouths of the 9 spring eyes were slowly moving, reflecting shifts in the beast chasms themselves. But something was off. As the springs absorbed Tao force, the brilliance on those ribbons never changed a clear anomaly. Lin Moyu soon noted that these ribbons, faintly reflective, twined through the void until they formed a divine rune. He recognized it as the Divine Path rune, a spatial rune that forms a portal to a specific location. He had now found the Divine Path rune, and from that, a way to trace the space channel to its true destination. Chapter 42:13. Does your master know? The 10th spring did not appear, but a divine road talisman was discovered, which could also be considered a harvest. According to the direction indicated by the talisman, Lin Moyu quickly locked onto a certain space, which was less than 10 meters above the ground, essentially on the surface of the earth. Here, the ground was also woven from ancient great Taos and was not real earth. Lin Moyu's gaze fixed on that space and soon sensed spatial distortion. As the space twisted, a faint radiance appeared. Lin Moyu instantly caught a trace of that light, which projected onto the void and formed a spring. The spring flickered and disappeared in the blink of an eye, exactly as he had seen before. So, the destination marked by the Divine Road talisman is precisely where the 10th spring lies, but it shouldn't be that simple. Previously, in the Yellow Springs, he had seen the giant whale and also those creatures similar to soul devourers, but now there wasn't even a shadow of them. They must be in hiding. Although the space didn't seem large, the surroundings were filled with ancient great Daos. Lin Moyu guessed they must be hiding within them. These creatures hadn't appeared, probably waiting for him to be eroded by the ancient Daos, leading to a dramatic loss of strength so they could attack him then. Admittedly, this was a correct approach, but unfortunately it was useless against him. Lin Moyu snapped his fingers and a mass of undead servants appeared. Waves of powerful attacks swept in all directions. The undead servants had no specific targets and simply unleashed a saturation attack upon this space. Their assaults completely disrupted the ancient Great Daos, turning this once safe haven upside down. The ancient Daos, which had flowed for countless years, were severed, preventing the spring from absorbing the Dao force as usual. At this rate, even the yellow springs could dry up. The spring vibrated and roared, causing the whole space to quake violently. Lin Moyu, with his method, recklessly sabotaged this area. "If you don't come out, I'll force you out. Stop!" With an angry shout, the giant whale shot from the Dao, seething with fury as it charged Lin Moyu. "Stop! What a joke!" With a thought, Lin Moyu directed the undead servants to switch targets, now focusing their bombardment on the giant whale. The undead servant's strength was infinitely close to eternity. The giant whale had eternal level combat strength, a bit stronger than the undead, but not by much. Facing their relentless onslaught, the giant whale let out bizarre wails. Its body sprouted countless holes as immense force gushed out, blocking each attack. Yet when one barrage was blocked, another would follow. There were just too many undead servants, and their offensives came in waves. The giant whale raged. "I told you to stop, didn't you hear?" Lin Moyu ignored him, and instead the attacks only intensified. The giant whale fought back furiously, launching titanic attacks and wounding many undead, but it didn't matter. For every 100 fallen, there were 10,000 more. Lin Moyu wasn't even going all out. He had only summoned 10,000 undead servants. Yet that was enough to thoroughly suppress the giant whale. Although the giant whale's defenses were formidable and it remained largely unhurt, it must have realized Lin Moyu wouldn't desist. Its roars turned to piercing shrieks that echoed through the void. The great Dao churned, and countless soul-devourer-like beings materialized and charged over. They had hidden deep within, using the cover of the ancient Daos to avoid Lin Moyu's senses. Now summoned by the giant whale, they came forth to attack. Lin Moyu snorted coldly, and world-burning fire erupted in the void, instantly incinerating any of the soul-devourer-like creatures as soon as they appeared. No matter how many came, Lin Moyu would burn them all. Seeing this, the giant whale howled again, raising its pitch several times. Lin Moyu watched it with curiosity, wondering what new trick it could produce. To him, the giant whale was very interesting. Clearly not an eternal, possessing none of the eternal aura and unconnected to any Dao, yet still wielding power on par with an eternal. This form of existence was radically different from anything in the Five Realms domain. Lin Moyu even suspected it came from another domain entirely. There could well be more such existences beyond the Divine Road talisman, so he wanted to probe the giant whale's methods to be prepared for whatever might come. The giant whale's howl grew louder and higher, making the ancient Dao seem alive. Vast Dao power surged in, scattering the undead and swallowing up the giant whale. Then it vanished into the Dao, replaced by the sound of waves in the void as the ancient Daos transformed this space into an ocean. Interesting. Lin Moyu sensed that the giant whale had merged with the ancient Daos, becoming omnipresent within this place. As the Dao churned, a giant mouth appeared in the void, snapping at Lin Moyu. The undead servants reflexively launched attacks, but their blows were swallowed by the giant mouth, having no effect. With a stomp, Lin Moyu teleported back, letting the mouth snap on empty air. Snap! Another finger snap and a wave of undead servants appeared. This time, Lin Moyu summoned 1,000,000 undead, 100-fold increase, packing the void to the brim. 1,000,000 undead servants attacked in unison, again blanketing all directions, saturating the space. Their increased numbers and density far outstripped the previous assault, plunging the void into unparalleled chaos. The Dao power was scattered, unable to condense, and the whale, fused with the Dao, likewise failed to reconstitute. The undead servants forcibly cleared an area devoid of ancient Dao, expanding it outward. The ancient Daos were pressed, shrinking their domain further. The spring could no longer absorb from the Daos, and the yellow springs seemed on the verge of drying up. Stop it. From within the Daos came the whale's voice, clearly anxious. He pleaded repeatedly for a halt, but Lin Moyu paid no attention. Finally, unable to hold out, the whale began to beg. Stop for now, let the yellow springs flow again, and we can talk about anything. Whatever you want to know, I'll tell you. Now he had dropped his lofty airs. Lin Moyu smiled. What right do you have to bargain with me? You're not in the position to negotiate. The giant whale felt insulted, its voice turned ferocious again. You overstep yourself, Junior. Junior? Lin Moyu replied with faint disdain. You're just a gatekeeper. Does your master know you speak this way? You? The giant whale's roar was cut short as Lin Moyu said again, You'd better consider what punishment awaits if the yellow springs run dry. From their exchange, Lin Moyu caught that the yellow springs breaking would spell big trouble for the whale, even causing fear in it. What could frighten the whale except for someone even stronger? 10-1, the whale was just a watchman. Whether this guess was true, one test would suffice. The whale fell silent upon hearing Lin Moyu's words. Lin Moyu realized he was correct. At last the whale yielded, I've lost, enough. Whatever you want to know, you can ask. With a more subdued tone, Lin Moyu said, Now you're talking. So what's at the other end of the Divine Road Talisman? Chapter 4.2 and 4. What are the 5 world domains? Lin Moyu paused, letting the ancient great Dao recover somewhat to ensure the spring could draw upon Dao power. He wasn't worried the giant whale would go back on its word. His undead servant stood ready to cut off the Dao power at any moment. The giant whale emerged from the Dao, transforming into the shape of a middle-aged man in black. He looked at Lin Moyu with a complicated expression. You could discover the divine road rune, so you must be skilled in runes. Lin Moyu said directly, Answer my question. The giant whale's gaze grew complex. The other end of the divine road rune is Tianshu. Lin Moyu was momentarily stunned. Zuyan? The giant whale shook his head. Not Zuyan Palace, but Tianshu itself. Zuyan Palace is merely one part of Tianshu. Lin Moyu sensed things were becoming increasingly complex. Zuyan Palace was already a legendary entity, yet now Tianshu appeared a place unknown even in legend. He asked, Then what is Tianshu? The giant whale shook his head again. What exactly Tianshu is, you'll only know by going in yourself. I am only Tianshu's gatekeeper. The giant whale spoke of his own origins. He was once a void beast within the beast abyss, entering along with other void beasts, and influenced by the voice of the abyss, queued up mindlessly. At some point, chaos erupted and he fell into Wang Yuan. After some unclear interval, he reached the deepest part of the underworld and came through the spring to this place. Here his Dao was stripped away, but he didn't die. Instead, he became Tianshu's gatekeeper. There's an administrator within Tianshu who appointed me to manage the underworld. If the underworld's flow is cut off, I'll be punished. He gave me eternal combat power and endless life. I can't defy him. He spoke pitifully, none of his former arrogance left. Lin Moyu could sense there was no deception. Words might lie, but the soul rarely could. He asked further, In all these years, has anyone else entered? The giant whale replied, Once, someone at the half-step Chaos Realm went in. Hold on, Lin Moyu interrupted. You said half-step Chaos Realm? What stage is that? It's the realm you're in now, said the giant whale, looking at him oddly as if to say, You really don't know your own realm? Lin Moyu realized then that the stage after eternity was called Chaos Realm. Perhaps that was just the whale's term, the way cultivators called post-transcendence Holy Spirit Realm. So it was Kunlun Emperor who entered, Lin Moyu wondered. Of those who'd taken that step, only Kunlun Emperor fit. He pressed, Did he come back out? The whale shook his head. He did, but I was asleep then. I don't know where he went. So it was possible to leave Tianshu. If he wanted answers, he'd have to enter himself. Confident in his strength, Lin Moyu figured if others could return, so could he. Before entering, he asked the whale further about things in the beast abyss. As long as he followed the line of void beasts down the underworld, he'd reach the abyss's end, a huge waterfall, which would open occasionally, letting some void beasts through. They'd leap in, but what happened afterward was unknown. Those who'd come with the whale out of the underworld weren't his subordinates, but beast abyss spirits found all over the abyss. In the underworld, the whale could control them via the Tao, but elsewhere he could not. Beast abyss spirits instinctively attacked any invaders. Lin Moyu had only encountered spirits from the underworld since he hadn't yet delved deeply. Burning the underworld brought out the whale. If not for that, the whale would have kept hibernating and avoided disaster. Lin Moyu said that settles things between us. You continue watching this place, I'll go into Tianshu. The whale readily agreed. Happy to see him go, he regarded Lin Moyu as a harbinger of calamity. Lin Moyu's half-step chaos, realm strength didn't intimidate the whale using the power of the Tao here. He could have contended with Lin Moyu. The longer things dragged on, the weaker Lin Moyu would become as the Tao here eroded his strength until he'd be forced to retreat or perish. But who could have predicted Lin Moyu's many subordinates, or that he was immune to such erosion? The whale ended up utterly suppressed, without recourse. Lin Moyu reached the spot indicated by the Divine Road rune, sent another rune from his fingertip, and activated a rune forged entirely by the Tao itself. As space twisted, the rune shone and a spatial passage appeared in the void. At its end was Tianshu, with great Tao power flowing out the very source of Tao in this place. Lin Moyu stepped into the passage and vanished. The whale let out a long sigh of relief. Finally gone. The rune's glow faded, the passage disappeared, and the whale was swallowed back into the Tao, resuming his stillness. The place soon returned to its usual silence as it had for untold years. The spatial passage wasn't long. Soon Lin Moyu reached its end, where another divine road rune anchored the exit. These paired runes made for a stable passage, unshakable for eons. He passed through the rune, greeted by an ancient, boundless Tao. The exit opened onto solid ground, surrounded by lush, ancient forest. Lin Moyu stood motionless, shock etched across his face. Few things could surprise him, but this time he was genuinely startled. The Tao here was drastically different. In the prior spring ice space, what he sensed was age-old, formed by blending hundreds or thousands of Taos into a single orderly chaos. But here the Tao was not only ancient and fused, but more numerous. There were many Taos, each blending countless others, untouched yet patterned, swirling through this space. The Tao found in the spring ice space was but one of several similar innate Taos abounded. There was similarity as well as variety, many shared attributes. After a long, stunned examination, Lin Moyu finally grasped their true nature. And he arrived at a terrifying guess. Why was it called the Five World Domains? These are Taos from different eras. Each Tao represents an era within the domain. Chapter 42:15, the heavenly void palace of this era. Strands of the great Tao wove and flew through the void, sometimes merging, sometimes scattering. When gathered, they resembled dragons or phoenixes, manifesting marvelous spirit beasts, many of which Lin Moyu had never seen before. When dispersed, they became as mist and dream, transforming into fantastic, illusory visions. Upon careful observation, Lin Moyu discerned that though there were many Taos, their true origin lay with just four. These four Taos existed independently, yet each was a fusion of countless lesser Taos, in turn interweaving to produce the sights before him. While each of the four Taos had unique characteristics, they also shared familiar qualities, as if they were kin. As Lin Moyu studied them, a series of possibilities raced through his mind, leading him to a conclusion so shocking that he himself could scarcely believe it. Four Taos each representing an era of the domain. Therefore, this domain is called the Five Worlds domain. Prior to this age, it has already seen four worlds. This answer was astonishing, hardly anyone would believe it. Even Lin Moyu himself wavered, finding the concept incredible. After all, a domain is not just a world. While a world can erase an age under the will of the world and give birth to a new one, the underlying Tao foundation remains unchanged through cycles. Even if new beings are born with great differences compared to their predecessors, the core truth does not shift. But if the domain itself also had the ability to erase an era and give birth to a new one, how could new Daos emerge? This ran counter to everything Lin Moyu understood of the nature of domains. His Dao heart was shaken, but the four Daos before him, and the name Five Worlds domain, hinted that this answer might well be correct. His thoughts circled, eventually returning to the Daos before his eyes. Lin Moyu muttered, if this is true, how was it ever accomplished? Suddenly, the Daos began to roil. In the void, a projection appeared neither quite human nor dragon, shifting forms ceaselessly, its true nature obscured. As the shadow appeared, an aged voice sounded. How it was done is a good question. Unfortunately, those who knew the answer are no longer here. Lin Moyu was taken aback, and recognizing the figure's status, greeted with three parts respect, Junior Lin Moyu greets Senior. The other laughed softly, a sound filled with subtle meaning Lin Moyu could not decipher. After the laughter faded, the voice continued, you are only the second person of the fifth world to enter this place. Come, I will show you something. With that, the projection drifted through the Daos and Lin Moyu followed. Along the way, the figure continued to shift shape, and Lin Moyu's curiosity was piqued. According to the enormous whale, this person should be the region's manager. At first, Lin Moyu thought a manager would be similar to a rule administrator and therefore extremely powerful, but standing in the manager's presence, he did not sense overwhelming strength. However, as all the Daos circled around the manager, it seemed to confirm the authority of his role. Even if not personally strong, being able to command the Daos here was enough for formidable might. Lin Moyu gave him due respect. He softly asked, how should I address Senior? The reply came from ahead, I am nameless. You can call me Steward. Steward? Lin Moyu found the title intriguing. From the name alone, the other seemed more like a caretaker. Lin Moyu pursued his questioning. What is this place? Didn't that whale tell you? The steward replied. He called this place the Heavenly Void, but what is the so-called Heavenly Void truly? Lin Moyu pressed. The steward chuckled. If you wish to know what is the Heavenly Void, you must first understand what is heaven and what is void. What is heaven? What is void? These were questions Lin Moyu realized he'd never considered. Though his knowledge of the Tao was extensive, he'd never reflected on the singular concept of heaven. Having never considered it, he pondered it now. If I'm not mistaken, on the grandest scale, heaven refers to all of creation. The entire domain stretch it further, and it's all chaos. For cultivators, heaven is their Tao heart, their own vision of the heavenly Tao, unique to each. As for void, all things have a real and illusory aspect, heaven included. The heavenly Tao of our hearts is impartial, but it can also be partial. The steward's laughter interrupted him. You're making things too complicated. The Tao is utmost simplicity. Think again. Lin Moyu nodded, knowing the truth of the Tao's simplicity, a concept he had studied. What seems profound at first becomes simple to the adept. He said, the simplicity of the Tao is relative. What is simple to me may be extraordinary to others. The steward smiled but did not elaborate further, leaving the true answer unsaid, perhaps by choice or because the time was not yet right. They walked on, unnoticed for a million li, always amidst dense forest, seeing little new scenery. Lin Moyu had the intuition that flying here would bring ill fortune. Trusting his instincts, he kept to the ground. As they walked, he noticed the Daos around them thickening toward their destination. Finally, the steward halted, forming a great hand from the Tao to point ahead. We're here, have a look. Lin Moyu advanced and saw he stood atop a slope descending into a basin. Ancient trees filled the hollow. From the basin rose the threads of the Tao as if this were their source. But here, unlike elsewhere, the primeval forest was filled with living beings, not those evolved by the Tao, but true creatures. Yet they were trapped here, unable to escape, bound by an intangible force. Their forms varied greatly, many unfamiliar even to Lin Moyu. These beings were all strong, the weakest, a lord of the Tao, some even of eternal level. His gaze swept to the center of the basin where a palace stood. This is the heavenly void palace. Lin Moyu was startled. The palace was nearly identical to the heavenly void palace he had seen before, even bearing the same breach in its structure, confirming that his vision had not been an illusion, but real. At this, the steward smiled softly. Strictly speaking, it is the heavenly void palace of this era. Chapter 4216. What is the test? The butler's words once again altered Lin Moyu's worldview. Perhaps he had been startled too many times. He remained quite calm after hearing this, just a little surprised. What is the heavenly void palace of this era? The butler replied, There's nothing that comes free in this world. If you want answers, you have to seek them for yourself inside the heavenly void palace. However, let me warn you, it's not safe within the palace. You may get what you want, but there's also a chance you'll lose your life. All I can tell you is that this place hides the greatest secret of the entire domain. Through countless ages, many have come here, all seeking this secret and wanting to become lord of the domain. None succeeded. Lin Moyu's mind spun as he parsed the butler's brief statements. In just a couple sentences, there was a wealth of hidden information. Earlier, the great whale had said, since becoming gatekeeper, only one person had entered. The butler had said he was the second to do so, yet now he said many people had come across countless eras. This contradiction made Lin Moyu realize that when the butler said he was the second, he referred only to the current era. Now, speaking of countless ages, he meant other times entirely. He also spoke of this as the heavenly void palace of this era, suggesting that there was more than one such palace, perhaps one for every era. According to the butler, the secret of the heavenly void palace was likely tied to becoming the lord of the domain. This was precisely why Lin Moyu had no choice but to enter. He wished to become the lord, but the path he'd chosen might not be correct. If he could find the right method within the palace, so much the better. As for the dangers, Lin Moyu already had strategies in mind. The butler spoke quietly. Consider your choice carefully. If you wish to go, follow that path. At its end is the heavenly void palace. Lin Moyu saw the small path the butler indicated, upon which faint divine runes flickered. After a moment's scrutiny, Lin Moyu murmured, Is this the path of seeking truth? The butler chuckled, You are correct. That is the path of seeking truth. Only by walking the path can you reach the heavenly void palace. If you do not, you'll never arrive. The path of seeking truth was a special kind of road constructed of divine runes or with formations by many sects for their disciples. It tested one's mind and at the same time could lead to different destinations. Thus, many disciples could walk the same route but reach different ends. To reach the palace, one had to walk the path of seeking truth, nothing unusual there. Lin Moyu gave the butler a slight bow, then walked to the starting point of the path and stepped forward. The path lit up, countless divine runes sparkling, drawing a flood of Tao power. In it, Lin Moyu felt his body grow heavier. He knew the path had been fully activated. His vision filled with scores of divine runes, a clear sign that great trials lay ahead. Fail, and he could not reach the end. The path's test was nothing but a test of character and strength, which Lin Moyu didn't care about. If even he couldn't pass, who in the domain could? Yet, a faint smirk played at Lin Moyu's lips. He had no intention of being tested. He had cultivated to the very peak of the domain who dared test him now. With inward pride, he strolled onto the path and did not rush forward, but stood and watched quietly. This path is of a very high grade. The one who set it had a profound understanding of divine runes, though still lacking. Just moments later, Lin Moyu had completely grasped the layout of the path and deduced that the designer's craftsmanship didn't match his own. Light flickered at his fingertips, divine runes sketched themselves and flew into the path. At once, the whole path began to shake. More and more runes shot forth, and stunningly, the path's runes made way for his. In no time, Lin Moyu's divine formations had suffused the path. It now belonged to Lin Moyu. With control of the path, Lin Moyu became its master and walked through it at leisure. There was no test for him at all. From afar, the butler saw this change, his expression shifting, body's transformations accelerating. He actually took control of the path of seeking truth, he murmured in absolute shock. Then, lower still, could he really have returned? Those words carried deep complexity. Had Lin Moyu heard them, he'd have pondered them long and hard. Watching Lin Moyu depart, the butler let out a long sigh and faded from sight. Walking onward, Lin Moyu found the path had sealed itself behind a transparent barrier. Along the way, many living beings watched him, but none drew close. Lin Moyu noticed they seemed wary of the path despite their great strength. Even some radiating eternal aura, none would approach. Clearly, strict prohibitions held here. Carefully observing them, Lin Moyu saw that while powerful, their wisdom was not commensurate. Almost all their acts were driven by instinct. Why had so many powerful but witless beings been left here and imprisoned at that? This too was a question to be answered, perhaps within the Heavenly Void Palace. At the end of the path, Lin Moyu stepped out and the palace came into view. It was vast, towering, exuding a terrifying aura. At this moment, Lin Moyu felt as if he faced the whole domain itself. If someone claimed this palace was the true heart of the domain, he would find it hard to doubt. Countless dows swirled above, spinning in vortices just like, or perhaps surpassing, those seen at the origin ancestral land. It felt like this was the true source of all dows. The source seemed to merely copy the heavenly void palace's heavenly principles. Lin Moyu approached, the other beings still only watching. The palace itself emanated a formless might, barring them from him. In front of its sealed great doors, on the plaza, Lin Moyu saw a long mark signs of previous battle. He summoned Little Python. Take a look, does any of this seem familiar? Little Python, appearing drowsy, looked around, eyes narrowing, and muttered uncertainly, I think I've seen this before. The instant he spoke, the tightly closed gate of the heavenly void palace began to glow. Chapter 427, The Gate Guardian Divine Beast. On the plaza before the Heavenly Void Palace, Tianshu Palace, traces of a battle remained, some marks serpentine in shape very much like the large python, and the python itself was indeed a giant serpent. Previously, during the python's evolution, there had been glimpses of the Heavenly Void Palace. Jokes had even been made then that the python might be the palace's gatekeeping beast. Now the main gate of the Heavenly Void Palace glowed the pattern on the door acquiring a new image, a python beast identical to the python beside them. The python's gaze was fixed on the palace gate, unable to look away. It muttered, Is that me? Suddenly, the python beast pattern on the gate became a beam of light that shone on the python's body. It seemed stimulated, howling skyward without end. The sound shook the forests, and countless other creatures joined in with frantic cries, echoing the python's call. Far away, the great Tao surged, and the house steward's figure appeared, looking toward the python and murmuring, What's happening? In the sky's Tao, a giant python danced with the Tao, coiling in the air. The steward was startled. The five-world python has returned? As he spoke, more beastly roars rang out in the distance. Heavenly void itself seemed to come alive. With a complicated look, the steward continued, Why would the five-world python return? The time shouldn't be right yet. Lin Moyu watched the giant python appear in the void. Now certain the python was really the gatekeeping divine beast of the heavenly void palace. For certain reasons, the python had once fallen. Its soul reincarnated countless times until it became the current little python taken as Lin Moyu's companion and now finally led home. Here, the python's memories and power had been preserved, and it was now truly returning to its roots. Lin Moyu saw the python's aura grow stronger, breaking through to the level of eternity, then climbing to the peak of eternal existence. Yet it did not transcend further. Some force held it back. At this point, the python was no weaker than a beast emperor. With the heavenly void palace's power, it could absolutely suppress a beast emperor. Among all the living creatures outside the heavenly void palace, the python was now the strongest. In Lin Moyu's estimation, if the python fought with all its might, it could even take on a half-step chaos level being not guaranteed to win, but it could certainly put up a fight. As the radiance faded, the python descended, reassuming its post as the gate guardian beast. It obediently curled up at Lin Moyu's feet and said, Master, now I know who I am. Lin Moyu looked the python over. It had changed. Its scales were thicker, its form larger, and it now emanated an inky, glossy light like a black hole swallowing the surrounding brilliance. Its crimson eyes glowed ominously in the darkness. Lin Moyu sighed, not as cute as before, you know. The python answered, aggrieved I was born this way. It's fine, ugly is fine too, Lin Moyu laughed. So who are you? I am the gate guardian divine beast of the 5 generations heavenly void palace, and the lord of the beasts in this primordial forest of Daos, the heavenly void palace. Gate guardian divine beast of 5 generations, Lin Moyu repeated softly. So there are more than one heavenly void palace? There are 5, the python said. Each palace has its own gate guardian. I am the weakest. Just then, Lin Moyu also heard the powerful roars from afar, containing immense might already beyond the eternal realm. Those must be the guardian beasts of the other palaces. How did you this gate guardian divine beast fall? Lin Moyu asked. I was wounded by the Chaos Emperor. I fell into a deep sleep after that, and at some point I simply died, the python whimpered nearly tearfully. Lin Moyu snorted. You don't know how? I was asleep. How would I know? Think about it besides you. Who else could get here? The python tilted its head, thinking hard, and then shouted, Are you suggesting the steward? Who else? Lin Moyu replied. The python shook its head. Impossible. He would never do such a thing. And he couldn't even walk the path of seeking truth. But Lin Moyu disagreed. The steward had been in heavenly void for who knows how many years. With so much time, much could change. It's hard to know anyone's heart. Only a stone never changes. Anyone with wisdom and life can change. And the path of seeking truth may seem tough, but perhaps it isn't. Do you know who made the path of seeking truth? Lin Moyu asked. The python shook its head again. No idea. It's always just been there. And the origins of the heavenly void palace? Again, the python could not answer. Don't know. When I awakened to intelligence, I was already the gate guardian. It didn't become the guardian by struggling for it, the palace chose it. Perhaps before that, the python was just another ordinary creature on the palace's outskirts, simply lucky to be chosen. Lin Moyu pressed on. I'm going in now. Anything I should watch out for? It's not safe inside, the python warned. If Master is going in, you must be careful. As for what's inside, I have no idea. So it truly was a guardian in name, only knew little, guarded less. Lin Moyu easily imagined the ancient scene. The little python battling the Chaos Emperor who came to enter the heavenly void palace. The python tried to block it and ended up mortally wounded. The Chaos Emperor spared it, merely leaving it defeated to slumber. But in the end, the steward finished the job, no doubt for other reasons. The python, of course, was not about to stop Lin Moyu. In fact, it eagerly opened the heavenly gate of the palace for him. The gate, sealed for uncounted ages, now swung wide, releasing a mighty ancient aura that surged skyward like a dragon, its roar resounding, causing all the Daos to ring and riling the recently calmed heavenly void anew. Master, you must be careful, the python urged. Lin Moyu smiled lightly. Don't worry, I won't die. When the breath from the door faded, Lin Moyu strode boldly into the 5 generations heavenly void palace. Elsewhere in heavenly void, the steward appeared, gazing at the palace, murmuring, He's gone in, then I must begin as well. With a wave, he created a vast formation upon the earth, crafted from divine runes, and even more complex than the path of seeking truth. The steward entered the formation, taking its core position, and fully activated it. The formation boomed into life. A torrent of Daos descended from the sky, pouring into the formation. The steward then faded, merging himself entirely into the Tao. Chapter 42:18. First planting the fruit within the Heavenly Void Palace. Heavenly Void Palace, a place that existed only in legend, not only was it real, but it wasn't the only one of its kind. Lin Moyu stepped in, treading on the ground of the Heavenly Void Palace, feeling a faint sense of unreality. The floor of the Heavenly Void Palace was incomparably solid, and Lin Moyu could easily tell the material was none other than innate primordial treasure. Using such an incredibly valuable material as building stone for a palace just as paving slabs, what kind of extravagance was this? So extravagant. The reality of the heavenly void palace exceeded even Lin Moyu's imagination. How powerful must its master have been? Probably only the lord of the domain could gather so much primordial treasure. After entering the palace, there was a long corridor that extended for a kilometer, and then split into two branching paths on either side. Lin Moyu did not walk in immediately, but instead took out the causal ring and silently activated it. Effect without cause. Lin Moyu decisively planted a fruit, the fruit being that he would certainly return safely from the heavenly void palace. The force of backlash surged against him, and with a bang, Lin Moyu was smashed to pieces, then a moment later reborn in a flash of violet light. Lin Moyu was long used to it, silently reborn, then silently died, his face showing no expression. The pain of total destruction meant nothing to him anymore. In all his cultivation, he had lost count of how many times he died. Fear and pain alike were things of the distant past. After 12 rebirths in a row, the backlash finally ended. Lin Moyu took a deep breath. 12 times, so there really is quite some danger here. But not mortal danger, so it's not a big deal. By counting how many rebirths he went through, Lin Moyu could gauge the intensity of the backlash. From this, he could analyze the difficulty of planting the fruit. The lower the number, the safer the path. The higher, the riskier. 12 times, it wasn't too treacherous. At most, a narrow escape. Lin Moyu waited a moment, still not taking action. He planted another fruit, effect without cause. His second use of the effect without cause was even more direct. He set the fruit that every choice he made would be correct. This was a totally unreasonable fruit, but then that's the entire point of effect without cause. In Lin Moyu's mind, after he had died so many times already, what was left to be reasonable about? He set the fruit so that, no matter what, his choice would be right. The causal ring flickered with a faint glow. He was once again shattered to pieces, but birth and death had both become things he took calmly. The purple radiance flashed again and again, 8 deaths in a row, and finally the backlash faded, only died 8 times. So looks like the choices won't be too hard to figure out. After planting the two fruits, Lin Moyu finally proceeded along the corridor deeper into the heavenly void palace. As he entered, he sensed that his own immortality great Tao was being somewhat suppressed. This was the first time his immortality Tao had ever been suppressed, even it was being affected. Lin Moyu immediately realized that the heavenly void palace was extraordinary. The immortality great Tao was truly unique. It practically surpassed the realm. If even it was being suppressed here, what of other Daos? Lin Moyu estimated he could not even unleash a tenth of his power here. He soon reached the end of the corridor and was faced with two paths, one on the left and one on the right. Without hesitation, Lin Moyu turned left. He'd already planted the fruit, his choice could not be wrong. No need to think about it, just follow his heart. Not long after, he came to another end, again chose the left without the slightest hesitation, as if the route were second nature to him. Another kilometer, another choice left, again and again, until he had long left the entrance far behind. After the last choice, he was cut off from where he'd started. A glance back revealed mists everywhere. Clearly, there was no way to turn back. So he kept pressing on. The heavenly void palace was immense. Lin Moyu could feel the power of the space great Tao at work, making the space itself shift and change in complexity. He continued boldly forward, making another dozen or so left or right choices until he finally saw the corridor's end. At its end was a small garden with a towering ancient tree in the center so tall its crown could not be seen. The moment Lin Moyu saw it, a warning rose from deep within his soul. This tree was far from ordinary and was a real threat to him. Lin Moyu halted at the end of the corridor, not stepping into the garden. As long as he didn't enter, the ancient tree wouldn't act. Snap. With a snap of his fingers, 1,000 undead servants appeared, charging toward the ancient tree. Read crazy good novels at Falu. His spiritual sense had never failed him. After countless tests, if something was a threat, he would attack first. The undead servants brandished their ghostly blades and charged at the tree. But in this place, the power of the great Tao was heavily suppressed. Their combat power was far less than usual, not even at the Tao Lord level, dropping a full realm. Lin Moyu sent a thought, and the vast world suddenly manifested, forcibly counteracting the heavenly void palace's pressure to restore his undead servant's power to peak. The ancient tree came to life with a thunderous movement, countless branches whipping down like whips. This ancient tree's power had already reached the very peak of eternity, stronger than the undead. Please send flowers. The undead were hurled away by the strikes. Branches transformed into treant warriors who engaged the undead in fierce combat. These treant warriors were very strong, stronger than the undead, and extremely numerous at first. The undead shock force was suppressed. No one really knew how many years the tree had lived and how many branches it had. Lin Moyu's initial force of 1,000 undead was utterly insufficient. If so, he'd just add more when it came to fighting with numbers. Lin Moyu was never afraid. Space twisted, and 100,000 undead surged forth, 100-fold increase, and the momentum shifted back to Lin Moyu's side. The ancient tree sent down innumerable branches. The earth trembled and vast networks of roots shot from below, lashing through space to strike the undead servants. The tree roots were even mightier, able to cleave through space impossible to dodge or parry. Undead were smashed apart by roots, but the next instant they revived and kept fighting. The garden wasn't that big, but as the battle escalated, the space inside rapidly expanded, swelling hundreds of times larger enough to fit more branches, more roots, and more action. The tree's maneuvering space was greater, and so beneficially was Lin Moyu's. Lin Moyu could tell that the ancient tree commanded the space great Tao. Expanding the space was necessary, as it had been limited to the garden, cramping its combat potential. If the space stayed small, the tree couldn't unleash its strength. Now that it was vast, both sides could go all out. It benefited the tree, but Lin Moyu more. With another thought, undead servants multiplied tenfold again. 1,000,000 filled half the available space. However fierce the tree became, it couldn't quickly break 1,000,000-strong undead blockade. The undead's attacks rained endlessly on the tree's body, like torrents from the heavens. Soon, cracks began to spider across the trunk, spreading out until they covered it. In just a few moments, the ancient tree collapsed with a shudder. The trunk snapped, but the roots didn't die. Vast masses of roots scattered the local undead, and then, clutching the trunk base, drilled down into the earth, vanishing. The garden was left with just a huge pit. Lin Moyu didn't send the undead after it, there was no need. Given the dangers within the Heavenly Void Palace, any undead pursuing the roots would only die pointlessly and learn nothing for their trouble. He crossed the garden and entered a new section. In the rolling waves of the great Tao up in the void, a faint projection slowly materialized. The butler appeared. The butler gazed silently at the garden, then quietly dissipated. Chapter 4219, You Can't Turn Back. Lin Moyu passed through the small garden and found himself before a palace lake, above which water bridges crisscrossed in a lattice. Suddenly, the space around him began shrinking, and the scenery in his vision distorted. An immense force slammed into him from the front as though a solid, unbreakable wall crashed hard into his body. With a bang, Lin Moyu was knocked back several hundred meters before coming to a stop, almost returning to the small garden he had just left. This force took him by surprise, but it wasn't strong enough to injure him. Once steady, Lin Moyu understood what had happened. After that tree escaped, the previously expanded space rapidly collapsed back to its original size, forming a spatial wall that knocked him back. The space inside the Heavenly Void Palace seemed independent and extremely sturdy. Had a battle of that scale occurred elsewhere, the entire void would have shattered, but here, space remained unmoved. Looking back at the small garden, Lin Moyu let slip a barely perceptible smile and swept his gaze toward the sky. Then he continued on toward the lake, his movements on the surface appearing utterly normal. Inwardly, though, Lin Moyu remarked, "So it really is you? Looks like you want to get inside the Heavenly Void Palace too. What is truly in there?" Just now, as he was nearly forced back into the small garden, he noticed something. Within the network of spatial dows overhead, he sensed the butler's, Guanjia's aura. The house steward hid himself well, but not well enough to evade Lin Moyu's perception. For the steward to silently enter the heavenly void palace and trail behind meant he must be up to something. Countless years ago, when the Kunlun Emperor came, the butler took advantage after Kunlun wounded Little Python. The steward killed the python, stripping this era's palace of its guardian. Over all those years, the butler must have entered the palace more than once, yet never achieved his goal. Perhaps he needed someone else's hand to succeed. By now, though, he had surely learned to circumvent the guardian and slip inside quietly, and as soon as Lin Moyu arrived, he followed. Lin Moyu's curiosity only deepened. What was hidden within the heavenly void palace? From his exchanges with the butler, he could already infer a few things. Be the steward an artifact spirit or a living being, ultimately he sought one of two things, power or freedom, and these are often inseparable. The butler likely wanted both. He wasn't worried. The butler would show himself eventually, and Lin Moyu could then find out his intentions. Returning to the lake, he stepped onto the bridges. The lake was sizable and the bridges formed a dense maze. Here, a powerful force prevailed, the sky pressed so low it was hard to fly. Lin Moyu tested the air, realizing it wasn't impossible to fly, but doing so would trigger a restriction and bring attack. With his perception, Lin Moyu could see the restrictions above the lake. It was all one gigantic formation, grander than the path of seeking truth, but less complex, possessing some of the Tao's simplicity. Where there's a formation, he could take control, and by mastering the formation that blanketed the lake, he could pierce the maze's secrets. Boom! Suddenly, the lake erupted with spray, and a host of flying fish shot from the water, transforming into sharp arrows aimed at Lin Moyu. Each of these arrowfish was as strong as an eternal. In the heavenly void palace, eternity seemed commonplace, making Lin Moyu feel a rare sense of awe. After all, eternity was already at the pinnacle of the domain, yet here it appeared almost everywhere, which only testified to the palace's overwhelming level. A wave of undead servants appeared, morphing into shields to block the arrowfish. When arrowfish met undead, they erupted with thunderous blasts, disintegrating the undead instantly to dust. Each explosion was like an eternal self-destructing. The undead couldn't withstand it. Strangely though, the explosions only affected the undead. With no impact on the surroundings, this made Lin Moyu cautious. If he, rather than his undead, were targeted, the explosion could reduce him to fragments too. While he could revive, if the number of deaths surpassed his limit, it might mean true death. His current limit was once per second, resetting every 20 seconds. He couldn't exceed that. If he did, actual death could occur, but he still had enough undead. When one batch died, the next instantly replaced them, and so the cycle continued, with neither side exhausting its numbers. Arrowfish kept surging endlessly from below the lake as if infinite. As the deadly cycle repeated, Lin Moyu realized something was wrong. No conjured enemy should sustain itself forever. Examining the lake, at last he saw its true nature. The lake, too, housed a formation, one integrated with the formation above. The heavenly formation supplied a flood of Tao, and the arrowfish were not real, but attacks born of the formation. As long as the heavenly void palace's Tao was not exhausted, the attacks would never cease. The more he studied it, the more wrong it felt the power here would overwhelm even him. If the Kunlun Emperor once came and walked a similar path, he must have faced something similar, and yet the Emperor clearly passed through. This meant a solution must exist. Lin Moyu's current approach was not the correct one. Deciding to solve it by unraveling the formation, Lin Moyu focused on the sky's formation. The one in the lake was too well hidden, with its workings uncertain. The formation in the sky was subtle and paradoxically more difficult to break for its simplicity. The whole thing maintained a kind of balance akin to a natural formation, stymieing easy efforts. After some observation, Lin Moyu figured out the trick, so that's how it works. He took 3 steps forward. Instantly, the tumultuous lake stilled, and all the arrowfish vanished as if the previous assault were a dream. He hadn't yet broken the formation, but he understood its operating logic. The formation imposed a rule on the bridge above the lake: remain still on the walkway, and the lake's formation would attack. Try to retrace your steps and you'd be attacked as well. You could only go forward, never back. Only by continually pressing on would the lake remain calm. But the walkways were as twisted as a labyrinth. If anyone lost their way and tried to turn back, they would be beset with overwhelming attacks that even most Eternals couldn't survive, much less anyone less than half step to Chaos Realm. If indeed the Kunlun Emperor once walked here, he must have simply kept moving, never pausing, following the right path. While pondering, the lake exploded again into arrowfish as Lin Moyu stopped a moment. With just 2 seconds of hesitation, the formation reactivated, unleashing another round of attacks. Chapter 4020, Controlling the Formation, Surpassing the Formation. Lin Moyu walked and stopped in turns. When he moved, the formation on the lake would halt, and when he stood still, it would resume. He acted like a wanderer, constantly teasing both formations, toggling them between active and inactive states. By observing their operation, Lin Moyu became increasingly clear on how to tackle the formation. His 10 fingers danced in the air, drawing divine runes that left countless after images. Each intricate, layered rune flew from his fingertips. Every rune formed a small formation Lin Moyu resolved to counter simplicity with complexity, using a host of intricate divine runes to alter the structure of the formation above the lake, thereby gaining control. The formation in the sky was far too simple. If he just followed its established path, he would go astray. The only way was to do the opposite, to walk against its direction. More and more runes shot out, taking positions in the midair above the lake, some even darting extremely far away. Before long, Lin Moyu's runes were everywhere over the lake. The formation within the lake ignored the runes. Lin Moyu realized this formation only targeted living beings and paid no attention to the runes, confirming his suspicion that breaking the formation with another formation was the optimal solution. Finding the right path was only secondary. If this place were a game, walking the maze was merely clearing the level, while cracking the formation meant becoming the master of the game, not just a player, a shift in both role and mindset, like a chess piece suddenly becoming the player. With his divine runes in place, Lin Moyu activated the network. Each rune was a self-contained formation, but upon activation, they linked together into a vast, complex network whose sole function was to suppress and control the formation above and stabilize its behavior. From Lin Moyu's perspective, it was like laying a shell over the sky's formation, allowing him to become its new master. The network rose into the sky, enveloping the formation. With a great rumble, his array merged into and seized control of the original. Lin Moyu's mind entered this new core. Gazing down at the lake, he could now see the true safe route clearly. Still, he didn't act right away. Instead, he controlled the formations, cutting off power to the lake's formation. Where arrowfish had attacked moments ago, they vanished instantly. He'd passed the main part of this trial, but there was another half. The formation in the lake itself. It seemed that the lake hid a deeper secret. Observing from above, Lin Moyu found it was easy to analyze the inner formation. He began drawing runes again, replicating his earlier method. Suddenly, his brow furrowed, his body shot upward. Necromancer servants retreating to shield him in layers, reinforcing his defenses. Just then, from the bottom of the lake, columns of water shot skyward with a violent crash. The water was unusual, unlike anything Lin Moyu could name, yet of extremely high grade, not inferior to innate primordial treasure materials. The water pillars acted like steel, bursting with power, sending necromancer servants flying and shattering their bodies as they passed, breaking through layer after layer of protection. In an instant, more than half of the defensive rings were destroyed. The water pillars kept coming, with fresh necromancers appearing constantly to take the brunt. It really isn't that simple, Lin Moyu noted. At the lake's deepest part, beneath the formation, he spotted a glowing item. This object was feeding energy to the lake's formation and even controlling its operation to some extent. Now, the formation in the lake became more aggressive. Pillars of water battered the necromancers while waves of arrowfish attacked. Lin Moyu responded by summoning even more necromancer servants, some serving as shields, others countering the arrowfish. There were so many, the situation quickly stabilized, letting Lin Moyu keep working on his runes without concern. As before, the lake's formation ignored the runes, targeting only Lin Moyu. Soon, a whole new network of formations covered the lake, then sank in to encase the old one. With both sky and lake formations under his control, the area finally grew peaceful, done. He thought, yet he had barely relaxed when, with a thunderous boom, the lake erupted, a massive water column shooting skyward, shattering the bridges overhead and annihilating his necromancer servants, with even Lin Moyu himself being blasted away. Fortunately, the undead had absorbed most of the impact and Lin Moyu only got knocked back. A gigantic figure of pure silver glass rose from the lake, a mountain-shaped treasure blazing on its chest. This mountain-shaped treasure had formed the giant and now became the final opponent. Only by first controlling the sky's formation could one activate the treasure. It then provided power to the lake's formation. Defeating the formation in the lake made the treasure itself emerge. The giant stood mid-lake, upper body exposed, frantically drawing power from the lake. The more it absorbed, the stronger it grew. Lin Moyu manipulated both formations at once. The sky's array poured Dao into the lake's array, which in turn sent a storm of arrowfish to assault the giant. Thus, he confronted the giant purely via the formations. Without acting himself, knowing this was exactly what the test required, he had to master both arrays and use them against the giant. Lin Moyu fully understood the test setter's intentions, so he played the game accordingly. The giant battled the arrowfish in a ferocious clash. Both sides unleashed immense power. The arrowfish exploded within the giant's body, detonating with devastating force, covering it in wounds they seemed to be winning. But before long, the giant began adapting to their attacks. Soon, their explosions only caused superficial injuries and would eventually lose all effect. Realizing that merely relying on the arrays would not suffice to defeat the giant, Lin Moyu understood. Beyond merely controlling the formations, he needed to innovate, enhancing the formations beyond their original design. So be it, let's make this fun. Competitive fire burned in Lin Moyu's heart as he resolved to claim victory through mastery of the art of formations itself. That's all the chapters I'm able to narrate for today. I'm a one-man team balancing a full-time job, so your support truly means a lot. If you like my narration, drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll make sure to reply. Thanks for supporting the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.